So soul to soil, we learn through nature's lens. So I'm going to get a little bit esoteric at first, and I'm going to ask you to just think about, what is nature to you? I've included a definition from Oxford Dictionary, and I just want you to take in this definition. I'm going to read it aloud. The phenomena of the physical world collectively, including plants, animals, the landscape, and other features and products of the earth, as opposed to humans or human creations. So I'm just going to ask you to take that in for a second and see if anything jumps out at you. What does the definition say about humans? It seems to suggest that humans are opposed to nature, are outside of nature. Are we? What do you think about that? So what I think is that this definition suggests that there is a paradigm at play here, meaning that there is a very specific perspective to this definition. Whomever crafted this definition believes, or seems to believe, that humans are separate from nature, or perhaps opposed. Humans and human creations are opposed to nature. I personally believe that we are part of nature. So, and it's actually that connection that has really made a difference, a meaningful difference in my own life and in the lives of my children. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But first, let's just explore another definition. What is a paradigm? So according to Wikipedia, in science and philosophy, a paradigm is a distinct set of concepts or thought patterns, including theories, research methods, postulates, and standards for what constitutes legitimate contributions to a field. So it seems in this definition, a paradigm is essentially a box, right? And when you're evaluating a subject, if it fits inside that box, then it is considered legitimate. If not, then it would be considered illegitimate. So that's just, I want you to hold on to that definition, and then we're going to bring it back in a little bit. All right, next. So here's another one. This one is from vocabulary.com, a little bit of a different slant. So a paradigm is a standard perspective or set of ideas. A paradigm is a way of looking at something. When you change paradigms, you're changing how you think about something. So just a little food for thought here. What is the paradigm that you apply to education or your children's education? I'm going to actually list a few paradigms that I have learned from a few of my mentors and teachers. I believe these 4 paradigms came originally from a thought leader. Her name is Carol Sanford. And we're just going to do a quick review of these. So these are 4 paradigms or lenses through which most of our world evaluates, given context, given subjects. Okay. So the first is in this top corner here, is extract value. Okay, so extract value would be to satisfy a need or want. So let's just take, for example, a home garden. Let's take that as a topic. If I am looking at that home garden through an extract value standpoint, I might think about what might be my interest there. Well, I might want to grow things, right? I want to grow food. Maybe that's the value, and that's the purpose for my garden. I am going to evaluate it through how much food can I grow from this garden, okay? Now let's look at this second definition right over here. So this one is arrest disorder. This lens, I want to stop, my primary concern is to stop bad things from happening. So if I'm looking at my garden, one of the bad things that I can think of would be that, weeds get in the way, or pests. So I might spray an herbicide or an insecticide on my plants, right? That would be an action I take because I'm looking to stop bad things from happening, okay? So the lens is the pests. How do I stop the pests? And then the action comes from that perspective. So the third one here is to do good. And if I'm focused on doing good, I'm acting in service of a cause, or, you could call it an ism, right? So let's say that I believe that it would help our environment if more people had home gardens. So I'm going to start a foundation to raise money to help people who don't have the resources to start their own gardens, maybe education, some practical operational help, that kind of thing. So it's to act in service. That would be to do good. That's the way that I would view this garden. You know what? How can I do more and act in service of supporting home gardening? And then the fourth. So the fourth perspective is to regenerate life. And this one is actually the least common, especially in industry. And in this perspective, my primary interest is to do what it takes to keep life going now and in the future. So if I'm looking at my gardening space, I might do different things to that space because I want to keep life going. I want plants to not just grow for just this season to give me food, or, to just grow to, look beautiful just for this time frame. I want to make sure that this piece of land can keep going and keep producing. So I'm going to do different things to it. I might not want to spray chemicals on it. I might not only grow certain plants on it. I might, grow different kinds, at different times to support life and the turnover of life. So those are four paradigms. Now, we were just talking about home gardening. That may not be your thing. But what I'd love for you to notice is, if just looking at these as examples of the perspectives at play, which one do you find yourself applying most in your life? So it could be as a parent, it could be in your career, it could be at home, it could be, in your relationships as a neighbor, as a consumer. What is the paradigm that's most at play for you, that you feel is most at play for you? And then which paradigm do you apply to your child's education or your children's education? All right, so just something to think about. So next, I'd love to share with you some thoughts about truth versus perspective. And I have not a very trivial question here. My question is, when thinking of truth versus the word perspective, is there a difference? Now, I did this presentation just a few days ago to a live audience, and I posed this question to them. And one of the exercises I did was I actually said a phrase that tends to trigger different feelings and thoughts and emotions. And I asked the group to close their eyes, and I asked them to raise their hand when I named the emotion that was triggered when I said this phrase. And this phrase in particular was climate change. And what was really interesting was we had all different feedback from the emotion or the emotional experience that was triggered when I said climate change. And we didn't even have to get into the thoughts that came up. Because it was clear just in reading the emotion of the room and all the different types of emotions that the crowd was experiencing when I said climate change, that there are clearly many different perspectives on that term. So then I posed the question, and I'll pose this to you. If I named, an event in history, do you think there is one version of that historical event or that time period? Is there one version of that? Do you think that there are differences in the way that many of us see various times in history and the way things have gone? Even if I talked about a social idea, so in like social studies, might there be one perspective, or are there more likely multiple perspectives surrounding these subjects? And another question I will pose is, in the things that you believe, with the beliefs that you hold, whether it's about historical events, social constructs, education, health, any of these things, nature, how many of the things that you believe to be true have you personally witnessed and experienced? And how many have been told to you through someone else, either an organization, an entity, or just another person's experience or ideas? So that being said, my question now is, who is right? So it was very interesting to have this conversation in a group because you could really feel the energy. But I'm hoping that I can pass this idea of I don't have answers to these questions. I certainly, um, my kids have been in conventional school for most of their schooling. This was our first year homeschooling. So I hadn't even considered these questions. I hadn't really asked them until I stepped out of the operating paradigm and actually asked myself, what is mine? What do I believe? What is the lens that I'm looking through when it comes to educating my child? So now I'd love to ask you, where do you think our standard educational paradigm comes from? Where does it come from? And again, this is not for me to answer. This is just something to think about. When we asked at the event, we actually had some certified teachers in the audience, and they said, teachers unions, governments, to some respect from the teacher. So anyway, just something to think about. Where does that paradigm come from? Because now we've learned about paradigm and how influential it is. So where does that come from? And then I'm going to move my picture over here so you guys can see. This is actually my littlest one. He was 2, and we were on an amazing hike through Riverbend Park, and he saw this leaf. It looked like it was just suspended in air, and he was just delighted. And it was so amazing to just see a scientist at work, because he looked around it, he looked under it, he touched it, he smelled it. It was just adorable to watch him explore this suspended leaf. So now that we've discussed this whole idea of what a paradigm is, how it's this construct through which we decide what is legitimate and what is illegitimate. And then we also have explored truth versus perspective. Really, is there such a thing as one truth? And, who decides? Who decides what that is? And how do we decide what is right to teach? So these are questions that I just started exploring this past year, and now I'm just passing on to you. So how to decide what's right to teach? What is necessary for students to know? What's the goal of a child's education? Can a student flourish without external standards? How important is a child's relationship with learning? So I will tell you that while I am not conventionally trained in education, I have spent most of my life as a professional student. I was very good at being a student. And something I've reflected on, especially in the last few years, is my relationship with learning. Because as an adult, I love learning. I am an insatiable learner. I encounter something in my life, and then I just dive in deep to try to find answers to it. Now, as a student, I really only cared about making the grade. I wanted to be, top of my class. I wanted to get the good grades, but I would basically learn information for the test, get the grade, and then it just went out the window. I couldn't retain the information. And I started reflecting upon that recently about what was it? What would have, sparked my interest so that I would get inside of this information so that it would actually stick with me. And especially when evaluating what is important to teach my children, I really have shifted my priorities, because as human beings, who live inside a body, who encounter nature, who encounter social communities, who are operating in this world and learning how to find what they love, what they're good at, what they want to build skills in, what is most important? Well, I was reading Ralph Waldo Emerson, a work of his. I believe it was in Nature. It might have been in Self-Reliance, but he said the great object of education is to inspire self-trust. And I've really been thinking on that, because he didn't say to teach math. He didn't say to teach kids how to write a 5-paragraph essay. Not that I don't believe that those things are important, but he said of all the objectives of education, it would be to inspire self-trust. And what is self-trust? As a coach, as a health coach for so many years, as a homeopath, helping people navigate the space of their own health, I have seen that if anything is lacking in most of the human beings that I encounter, it is self-trust. It's a lack of trust in themselves to navigate this life and not have to know exactly what's going to happen or where it's going, but to feel confident in themselves that they will be able to weather it no matter what. And to me, that comes from, there's so much to know. I mean, how do you even put inside of a curriculum all the things that there are to know in this world? All of these, I one time did this exploration of truth, and I was reading Socrates and Copernicus and Confucius and Galileo and all these incredible thinkers of all time. And so many of them had some version of the following quote, basically that if we know anything in this world, it's that we know nothing, that there's so much to know, there's so much to discover. So, well, then is what we teach, what we accomplish in school, what's most important, the standards that we fulfill, or is it our ability to seek out, to ask questions and seek out answers, to have an internal sense of what is our lens? What is the lens that I choose to look at this life through, at these learnings through? So I would just pose that question: how to decide what's right to teach. Now, what if we didn't decide? What if a curriculum provided a framework through which questions are asked, subjects are explored, opinions, impressions, and information develop organically within each student from his or her own experience? Now, I'm going to have you check in emotionally. I'm going to ask you to check in. When you read this, feel free to read it again. Or even when you entertain the question, what if we didn't decide what's right to teach? What is triggered for you? Is it fear? Is it lack of control? Is it dread? Is it worry that, maybe you won't make the mark, worry about failure? Or is it joy? Is it exhilaration? Is it adventure? Is it, wonder at the possibilities? Just something to note there. I wanted you to just check in and maybe note that down if you are taking some notes here. Okay, so let's get on to the program. Introducing Soul to Soil. We are a homeschooling pod. We are not a school. I like to call us an empowered curiosity community. We are learning through the lens of nature, and nature is the foundational, I should say nature/life. That's the foundational subject that we explore. What is Soul to Soil? Let me move my picture just again. What is Soul to Soil? Soul to Soil is a Waldorf-style homeschooler enrichment program for children 5 to 12 years old. Our 3-day-per-week pod offers 6 5-week-long segments. I'll get back into that in a little bit. Each guided by an essential theme: air, water, earth, fire, ether, and universe. So why soil? Well, so I have been studying health for a very long time. And in this last year, I was led to learn about soil. And, I could go into an entire presentation on this and why soil is so important, but I'm going to just pass along a little recommendation. You, just as parents or even with your children, there's a documentary called Kiss the Ground. It is absolutely wonderful. They even have a kids version, like a condensed version. I recommend if you get a chance to watch the whole thing, but it really explains why soil is so important, whether you care about the environment or you just care about health. Why it's so important. But let me just touch on it real quick. So what is soil? In general, we think of soil as dirt, right? Soils actually are complex mixtures of minerals, water, air, organic matter, and countless organisms. It's a carbon-based food web. And basically sand, silt, and clay, the stuff we think of in dirt, right? Those are just the soil minerals. What soil actually is encompasses much more. Now, I learned about this thing this past year as I've been studying soil and delving deeper into what's called regenerative agriculture, which is basically farming and tending to landscapes through the regenerate life paradigm. So I learned about this thing called the soil sponge, which is pretty cool. So the soil sponge, or soil carbon sponge, is a living matrix that soaks up, stores, and filters water. It holds landscapes in place, and it provides nutrients for an entire food chain. Basically, it's a self-regulating complex community. So soil sponge is basically dirt brought to life. It's a living community where organisms perform functions and exist in symbiosis. This was the inspiration for my school, Soul to Soil. In learning about the soil sponge, there is earth science, there is math, there is biology, there is physics, there's chemistry, there's every subject you can imagine. There's theater, there's music. I mean, when I started learning about this, I realized this is such an incredible platform that helps bridge a connection between our inner life and the outer world. Because as you can see in that Oxford Dictionary, it seems as though humans have defined themselves out of nature. And we wonder why we end up in such a situation like this past year where we're so disconnected, so fearful of nature, so worried about our susceptibility. And I've heard many incredible minds argue that it's actually this disconnection with nature that is responsible for all of this fear. That with the empowerment, with the self-trust, the trust that we are nature, that we are part of nature, that all of the rest falls into place. So this is the lens through which we will explore subjects of learning. Now, we have some core values. So Soul to Soil, it's not a school, but I call it an educational ecosystem. It is a space to expand into rather than fit into. And as I described, my personal experience back in school throughout my degrees, all of my degrees, I always found myself trying to fit a mold rather than solidifying my inner experience so that I could just expand into the unlimited possibilities and my potential. This is the space I want to create for our children at Soul to Soil. Our community will strive to maintain balance by focusing attention to a set of agreements. You could also call them core values, but I like to call them agreements because it will be very important and will be repeatedly built into our culture in the school that we all agree on certain values. This past year, I was able to test some of the curriculum with a group of children out in nature, and we talked a lot about independence versus community. We're all independents. We all have individual, beautiful, unique qualities. When we get together as a community, technically a community is a group of beings that share a common value. So these agreements are our values that we agree to keep harmony and balance within the environment. And these are very important for especially the type of strong-willed children that usually are attracted to programs like this one. Okay, so I'm going to go through these briefly, but these will be definitely gone into in more depth. We can certainly open up a discussion if you decide to apply for our program. So the first one is personal superpower, speaking from a place of self rather than about another. The second one is endless curiosity, practicing asking and observing rather than knowing. Knowing can be very limited. And I saw this beautiful quote that knowledge is learning, wisdom is experience. So when we want to experience and get inside of something, it's really important that we participate as an observer as much as possible. Discernment versus judgment. So rather than deciding this, we're going to explore a lot of this when it comes to tastes, like, flavors. Kids a lot of times will jump to a judgment. I don't like that. I don't like this. And we're going to really workshop the idea of using discernment, evaluating through an emotionally connected lens. And in our case at Soul to Soil, that emotion, the core emotion that drives what we do is love, not fear, but love. And we'll make that distinction. Nature's guidance is another one of our core values. So when we're exploring or problem solving, we'll ask, what would nature do? Mother Nature's been around a lot longer than us. Humans, sometimes I feel like we act like we know so much, and most of what we do today, we're operating on scientific discoveries only over the last 100, 150 years. And in the grand scheme of how long life has been on this planet, it's like we're little babies who are saying to, mother and father, oh, I got this. I know better. I know my science is better than, your wisdom. So anyway, that's just a personal add-on there. But this will not be me imparting my belief system. This is about nature, and we will be looking and observing what nature does. And then, hang on, let me just make sure I didn't skip over. Oh, there we go. Create, play, and manifest. So bring love to every learning adventure and be the creator of your own experience. This is super important when we're out in nature. It can be hot, it can be sticky. We rather than have, a culture of complaints, we're going to stick with this one where we're really going to charge the children with their own opportunity to bring joy to every experience and really focus on what they want to get out of it and not what's uncomfortable about it. Connect and collaborate. So this really goes into that symbiosis and the symbiosis of relationships in an ecosystem. Share gratitude and support with fellow community members. Nurturing environments. This has to do with order and keeping spaces, in a place where we can have happiness and fun. So whether we're outside or indoors, we're going to be gentle with our surroundings and try to restore them to the way they were when we came to them so that we can create space for that happiness and fun. And then self-care. So the greatest message is that loving yourself and caring for yourself is loving and caring for nature. I feel like, and just as somebody who's coached so many adults and personally struggled with this, there's just, I really see the importance of introducing this idea early to our children. Okay, so how do we explore nature? So as you'll see, these are typically subjects that you'd find in separation. These are our tools. So when we have a subject or a context that we are exploring, we're going to repeat it and learn it by using storytelling, reading, writing, drawing, natural movement, nutrition and cooking, integrated sciences. And I say integrated sciences because when we are encountering something in nature, we have biology at play, chemistry at play, physics at play, earth sciences. I mean, they're not isolated concepts when we're learning and seeing something function in real life. So we will be learning those things together as they apply to the subject that we're studying. Alternative health, math, art, music, performing arts. And when I say alternative health, I mean, I'm talking about human health, but from a greater, larger nature-based paradigm. Health as it was taught to me in school is much different than what I have found, really experiencing, from the wisdom of how health has evolved, how health perspectives have evolved over time. This kind of newer perspective in this last 150 years doesn't tend to include nature. So I say alternative health, meaning natural health. Okay, so that's how we explore nature. And then here are our segments. So we are going to be doing 5 weeks at a time. In general, we have this inhale and exhale approach. We will have that approach to our days, the structure of our days. So we will have scheduled times, even though we won't have compartmentalized subjects. We will have inhale time, which is like focused attention, and then exhale, free exploration. So we do this to follow a rhythm so that the kids, they will use rituals and habits, rituals meaning just repetitive action to signify this is our time to focus. We create space for it, especially out in nature. We really need to establish that focus space. So we will do that. And then we exhale and they get to explore and discover and observe and then bring it back to the focus teaching. And in the focus teaching time is when we will also branch out into the age groups because we do have 5 to 12 years old. And in the Waldorf model, those are very different age groups. So children will be segmented into their appropriate level to use the tools that are appropriate for their age group to explore the central theme that we're all learning about nature at once. So here are some dates for you to review. I will include this in our informational email so you guys can see. These are our themes. We're doing water first. These are in no particular order. Water is first because it's hot in August, September. So we will be doing a lot of the study of water, and I'm really going to delve deep into that. There's so much to explore and observe about it that isn't conventionally studied even. Water, molecular biology in the context of water is actually a very new area of exploration. We know a lot about the single water molecule, but there's so much more to water that is not taught and that we can discover with the kids. So there are the dates. We have air, fire, earth, ether, and universe. And then here is our program pricing. So we have 2 enrollment options. We have 3 full days, which will be Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. We also have a 2-day option if that works better for your schedule, because I know a lot of homeschoolers are enrolled in multiple things, or we have a lot of homeschool parents that have expressed interest who actually really love to teach their children. So we're trying to work as well as we can to complement other programs. We really can't do a drop-in model because this is a holistic program, and the child gets the most out of it when involved in the whole picture. So, so we will have 2 or 3 day options, and then we're going to offer a 25% discount to siblings. As somebody with 3 children, I know how helpful that can be. So we are happy to offer that. So for a single segment, you have the pricing there. So that full would be 3 days a week, part would be 2 days a week. And then we offer some cost savings if you buy 3 segments at a time. We have a registration fee of $99. And so we will have some materials. The kids will be wearing backpacks, and we're going to have some Waldorf aligned materials so that they are always prepared to draw, to write, to read, to measure, and we'll be providing that information closer to the start of the program. But right now, we're just getting the information out there. We have a tremendous amount of interest beyond what we had even imagined. So we're going to spend the next month and a half getting to know the families that are applying, and then really just aligning up our community. One thing I would also love to mention is that my interest is in connecting not just the children, but the families. I think there is so many wonderful things to learn. I have a lot of mothers who say, I want to learn this, and fathers. So I would love to offer some education to the parents as well. If you are interested in learning about the soil, about these systems, about these concepts with water and air and, fire, all these elements, and how it's connected to life, how that connects us to life, and how that helps us with our life. So that is that for right now. Although I don't have an option for you to ask questions live when you're watching this recording, please feel free to reply to this email. I am going to be on, I have a homeopathic practice, and then I have 3 children, so I don't have an administrative staff. So I will reply as quickly and as efficiently as I can and arrange a time for a chat. If you are interested in possibly in applying to the program. But that is that for now. And I want to thank you for taking the time to learn with me. And I look forward to getting to know you. All right. So have a wonderful, beautiful week wherever you are. And I look forward to connecting hopefully in person soon. Bye-bye.